Hello everyone, this is Lamin Sane of LS Web Apps. In this tutorial video, we're going to take a look at migrations and models. Okay, so migrations are just files that let you manage your schemas in the database and do rollbacks and stuff like that. And models are just the entities that you deal with in your application, like users, vehicles, and other types of things. Okay, so let me just show you quickly how we create migrations in Laravel. Even though Laravel by default ships with a migration file for users and a model file for users as well, but I'll just show you quickly. All you have to do is type php artisan make migration, and then you specify the migration file as well. So in this case, let's say create user1 table. Even though we already have a user table, I just want to show you what the file looks like when it's empty. So as you can see, Laravel already ships with one migration file, which is create users table, and inside there it creates many columns: an ID column, which is an auto incrementing column, a name column, email, password, and the length is 60, and a remember token field as well. So there's another migration file, which is the one we just created, create user1, and this is what it looks like when it's empty. But we're not going to deal with this for now. We're going to delete it. Okay, and I'll just explain what the other things in the other migration file is. So okay, Laravel migration files are just regular classes, and they extend migration class, and they have two main methods, which is the up and the down method. And the up method is you call the schema create there to create a new table. So basically all you do is call this static method on the schema class and pass it the name of the table and another anonymous function which accept a blueprint parameter type. And then you can say table increments, table string, and there's lots of other types that you can create, like example table text, which is just a longer version of string. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And in the down part of the class, the down function, that is, all you have to do is write whatever is going to reverse the effects of what's in up. So in this case, we created a table with some columns, and if we wanted to reverse that, all we needed to do is just drop the users table. Okay, so there's another migration file that Laravel creates automatically, and what it does is creates a password reset table with some email and token and created at columns, and the down function for that just deletes or drops the password reset table, but we're not going to deal with that in this video. Okay, all we require is this one here, and I'll show you the user model as well. And a Laravel model also is just a regular class which just extends eloquent, in this case authenticatable guessing extends from the eloquent class, so it user indirectly extends from authenticatable. Okay, so now that we know what a user model is, let's have a look inside the database folder, and that's where our SQLite database is going to live in, and the name for it we can find out looking at the config and database file here, and the name has to be database.sqlite. So let's just create a file called that in here. So I'll just create a file quickly and I'll call it database.sqlite. Okay, and inside it there's nothing for now. So all we have to do now is just run our migration. So and the migration you run by php artisan migrate install. That's going to install the migrations, and then apparently I made a mistake in spelling artisan, so just do that now. So it has created a migration table. Well, next all I have to do is just say migrate, and it's going to run all the migrations. So the difference between a migration table and a migration itself is that a migration table keeps track of where you are at in level of migration, so you can do rollbacks and stuff like that, whereas the migrations themselves are what actually creates the tables that you need in your application. Okay, so now what we have to do is go to our users controller inside HTTP here. So instead of returning this fixed array here, let's do something like user all. So basically what that is doing is it's creating that users table using the user model, and it's returning all users in there. Since we don't have any user, that should be an empty array. So instead of returning the view, let me just return users for now, and I'll just show you that it's empty. Okay, so let's go back in our browser and we refresh, and we should get an error because user is not found. We have to import the namespace. Okay, so what namespace is there for this? It has a namespace of app/user. Okay, so we'll do that in that here. So we'll say do it down here, use app/user. Okay, so go back to our browser and we refresh. As you can see, it's an empty array. So there's something called Tinker in Laravel, and we're going to use that to add records to our database. Okay, so we say php artisan Tinker, and what that does is just opens up a shell here wherein we can do stuff like user all, and since that needs the namespace, we're going to import that here. As you can see, all we have is an empty array. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to say user create, and then we're going to pass it an array which has the properties that we need to create a user. So let's look in our migration file, and we can find out which properties we need to create users. Okay, so we need a name, email, and a password. Okay, so for now let's just say name and say Jim, and email we say jim@yahoo.com, and the password, let's just say some password, even though you'd have to hash that in some way. Okay, so I'll press enter, and this confirms that the record has been created. When we go back to our browser now and I refresh, we should get that back in the browser. Okay, so now we have been returned this record here. So let's go back and create one more. So let's say some password 2, just say Eric. Okay, let's change the name to Eric as well, and I press enter. So now we have 2 records in the database. When I refresh, we'll get returned that in JSON here. Okay, so now let's adjust our users controller so that it returns that to the view as opposed to just the browser. But you will notice that now our view, we have to adjust it a little bit, because now we are returning objects as opposed to just string arrays. Okay, so let's go to the views folder, and that's in resources, views, and users index. And instead of just outputting user here, so we're going to access the name property of user. So now when I refresh the browser, you can see Jim and Eric being output to the browser. Okay, so now that we can list many users, let's see how we can list a single user. Let's say, for example, if we do users/1, it should just return that one user to us. Okay, so how we do that is, let's go to the users controller, let's go to the show method, and basically the show method gets passed an ID, and then we can use the ID to query for whichever user we want to return. So let's say user equals to user, and there's a find method on the user model class, which all models have, and you can pass it an ID, and it's going to return that single instance for you. So let's say return user, go to the browser and refresh. As you can see, we're being passed Jim, because that was the first user we created. When we change to, we get passed the second user. Okay, and when we query for a user that doesn't exist, we should get an error or nothing to the browser. Okay, since this result here will return null to us, so we've been returned null. Okay, so now instead of returning that to the browser, let's return a view, and we're going to call the view users dot show, and we're going to pass it an array which has user, and it's going to be given the user object which we just queried for. So let's create that view here, and inside users, so we're going to create one view called show.blade.php, and let's copy everything inside the index file here. Just paste it in here quickly, return this, remove this comment. Okay, so instead of doing a for loop here now, I'm just going to do a p tag. We're going to say user name, and we're going to do another p tag. We're going to say user, since we have access to the user variable, and we'll say email. Okay, so I'll just save that here. I'm going to refresh now. We should see Eric and Eric@yahoo.com. When I change that to 1, you should get Jim and Jim@yahoo.com. Okay, so that's it, guys, for models and migrations for now. And as usual, as we're progressing along, we'll dive deeper into all these topics as required. Okay, and I thank you for watching. I will see you soon in another video. Cheers, bye bye.